Well, good evening. I'm Bruce Hawley, and welcome to Circus History Live. Circus History Live is produced monthly by the CHS. Recordings of previous sessions are available on the CHS YouTube channel. In celebration of Black History Month, tonight's program will feature Bernice Collins, the first African American female clown with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. And now, without further ado, here's the host of Circus History Live, CHS Vice President Chris Berry. Chris?
Thanks, Bruce. Bernice is so much more than that. As many of those on this call know, not only was she the first African American female clown on Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, but she truly was a circus fan who saw her dream come true in so many ways. And so, Bernice, welcome to Circus History Live. How did this journey all start for you?
My mom took us to the circus every year when we were kids, and I became obsessed with it by the age of 14. And I was so mesmerized by, all the glitz and glamour, the animals. And I, at that point, I knew I wanted to be a part of that world. And it was just finding a way into it was a big journey. So,
So you grew
yeah.
up in Kansas City, and that was a place where Ringling typically would always make a visit to Kansas City. And you and your family, I know your father was he was a musician also. I mean, the Collins family was pretty well known around Kansas City in those days. But tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about that time that the circus did not come to Kansas City.
Yeah, it had to been the year after I graduated high school, and they did not come to Kansas City that year. So I went to Chicago to see the show, spent a week with my sister's college roommate, and went every day and would go to the matinee. They had school shows in the morning, and then they'd have like a break, and then they have an evening show. Well, I'd stick around all afternoon, hide out in the bathroom until the house cleared, and then when they, performers came into the arena to rehearse, I'd sit up in the stands and watch everybody. And I guess I caught the eye of a few folks, and they were like, well, "Who is that girl?" And of course, the guys were trying to talk to me, so I was going, "How do I get into this?" It's like, yeah, it was great. I met a couple of the King Charles troupe, and one of the guy clowns. I don't know if it was Dwayne Cunningham or somebody, and they told me about Clown College. Their train was parked right behind the amphitheater there in Chicago. They took me out to see what the train looked like, see how they lived, and I was totally hooked. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be my way in. So,
So tell me a little bit about, so this is like about 1977 or so,
yeah,
76 or so. In Chicago was it 76 or
it
77
was
that you,
76,
so
1976 in Chicago.
so that was a blue unit that was in Chicago. The 200th anniversary of the Circus in America was
Yep,
the theme that
yep.
year. Uh, it,
Everybody knew.
great circus, one of the best that I can remember seeing. But you put in your application to Clown College. What happened next?
Yeah, they didn't. I never really auditioned for Clown College because they didn't have auditions in Kansas City during that year, and so I sent in my application and I wrote letters to Kenneth and to Irvin Feld probably once a month. I bugged the hell out of them, and they accepted me in. And apparently, I found this out when I during Clown College. They Charlie King came down to see to to visit us at Clown College because there were four Black women in my class, and he came down. He wanted to check out what was there and who was there because he told me that they were about to hire their first Black female clown, and he wanted to kind of check it out and see who he thought it was going to be.
So this
So
is that Clown College class of 1977. There
yeah,
you
baby.
are in the first row of clowns, kind of over there on the right. But it must have been, I mean, obviously just the experience of Clown College itself is so unique, was so unique at that time. Tell me a little bit about what it was like arriving in Venice and being down there with all these other young people who wanted to be clowns.
It was exciting. I really didn't know what to expect. My dad drove down with me and um, to make sure I got down there okay and let me have keep my car with me. And not too many of us had cars, so it was pretty great that I had my car to get around. But it was I can't even I don't even remember the whole experience. I can't even tell you what it felt like because I don't remember. It's that long ago. And I just remember that I was bound and determined that I had to do everything I could to get into the circus. So I never knew, and I really didn't know that I had made it until the night after graduation, the day after graduation, and they came and knocked on my door and offered me a contract. Up until that, but I was on pins and needles, and I couldn't believe it. So yeah.
So 1977. Now that class, there were a lot of people who came out of that class. Peggy King was there, Chuck Sidlow was there, um, and
Skeeter Reese. Yeah, Skeeter was in our class. Yeah.
and uh, and a lot of people who went on and were with the show for a long time. You were obviously one of those people. Even coming up with your makeup, tell me a little bit about that because it was very unique.
Everybody had to design their own face. And I guess that's what I was going for, something different, something unique. And I didn't want to look like everybody else. And I didn't look like everybody else. So I didn't even want a red nose. I had a pink nose. So yeah. And a little
And
blue
then
accent around the mouth and everything. So
and
I
then
just want
and then you become this clown. I mean, you have been a circus fan since you were a kid, but what makes a clown funny?
I have no idea because I really didn't consider myself all that funny. I was cute and I could be funny. I had a sense of humor. And I just kind of went with that. And I did whatever they told me to do. If they gave me direction, I could go with that. But, coming up with my own gags, that was not my forte. I said, tell me what to do and I'll do it. So
But
it was fun. It was a
we
fun experience. It was
we
just fun.
talked a little bit, and your career goes on, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But Bruce mentioned at the beginning also, you were the first African American female graduate from Clown College. That was kind of an interesting situation, I'm sure, too, for you, just because you kind of became a bit of a role model for people as a performer. I would think some of the people who were in the audience there.
I think so too. Yeah. And those who came after me, and a lot that came after me told me that I was an inspiration to them. And I like that. I like that I was an inspiration to others to follow their dreams and pursue their own desire, that what they wanted to do. And it was okay to do that, because I had other people who inspired me as well. The King Charles Troupe and some of the black showgirls, and there were black male clowns on the show. But I just knew that I wanted to be a part of all of that. And I was honored that I was the first. The timing was just right, I think, for me to be the first. So
Yeah, it
yeah.
was really a unique time in the history. And you actually, I mean, you got to know Irvin Feld too. Uh,
Yeah,
I mean,
Urban and Kenneth.
I
Mhm.
think that, from what you have told me, they obviously appreciated you for what you brought to the table, but they also gave you other opportunities, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit too, because as I recall, you really always kind of wanted to be a dancer, right?
Yeah, but I didn't have the dance training growing up in Kansas City, and I got that as a clown on the road. My roommate was a showgirl that I roomed with on the train that year, and she was from New York. So when we got to New York, she actually took me to my first dance class. But my clown character during the production numbers would dance behind the showgirls, mimicking them. But that's how I learned the choreography. And that was how I got my start as to training to be a showgirl. But I got my first formal training in New York City with my roommate. So just started training from there for about two
And
years.
what, a spectacular performer you were. I mean, you definitely stood out in the crowd. Anybody who saw those shows, in the late 70s and early 1980s, definitely the Blue Unit definitely had their eye on you, Bernice. So tell me a little bit about, working with the elephants and things like that. I mean, here you were, this circus fan from the time you were a little girl, and now you are, performing in the center ring. I mean, it must have been pretty heady experience for you.
Well, one of the people that really inspired me as a performer and and being the kind of showgirl that I was, Barbara Woodcock. She was a goddess out there in the ring and on the elephant. they actually taught us how to ride elephants at Clown College because they were working down at Circus World at the time of Clown College, and that's where I met the Woodcocks for the first time. The year I got onto the show, they brought them out onto the show too. So I had already met her, but I loved watching her out there the ring. She was quite an inspiration to me as a performer,
Yeah,
and I took a lot
Barbara,
from her.
Barbara and Buckles Woodcock, truly, some of the greats in circus history in the last half of the 20th century, and what a spectacular sight that she
Oh my
presented
God,
when she was
her
dressed.
presence, her stage presence out on the show was incredible, and yeah, she inspired me a lot. So
So when you look back at those years, there you were around a lot of people, some of the real greats of the circus world. You talk about Barbara Woodcock. I know Charlie Bauman was someone who was a big supporter of you at the time. Also, tell
I
me
had
about.
to earn that from Charlie. He wasn't a big supporter of me until I earned it from him. It took a few years.
So 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 tell me a little bit about that, because here is a guy who was in, I mean, truly one of the legends in circus history, Charlie Bauman, and all of a sudden you decided that you kind of liked being around those cats, right?
No, no, no. That happened as a child as well. When I was called in for my contract to be offered a contract for my first contract at Clown College, I told Irvin at that time that my goal eventually was to be able to work with the big cats. And it wasn't until 6 years later that I actually got the opportunity to do so because I brought it back up to them again during contract talks. I was still interested in doing that. And Charlie was on the he was at the place where he was about to retire. But they wanted to keep his cats going. And I believe they talked him into taking me under wing. But by that time, I already developed a relationship with Charlie where he did like me and trust me. So, but it took a while to get that from Charlie. Charlie was that way with everybody, though. You had to earn it to get
These are
that
not,
respect and love from Charlie. Yeah.
and these are not little pussycats. I mean,
Oh
these
no,
these
no.
animals are deadly. So
The first time he took me into the cage, it was with some babies that he was breaking in. That's how he started me off with for the young cats that he was starting to break in. So yeah, that was an incredible experience that you can't even put into words.
so
But
then when you did take over, I mean, you kind of took
I,
over his act in a lot
I
of
never
ways,
took
right?
over. I never took over his act. I performed with him in the cage probably about half a dozen times before they pulled the plug on the whole project, and then he retired at the end of that year.
Yes.
But I did get the opportunity to perform with him in the ring. But he was always in the cage with me. I never took over the act. Yeah.
So then after that, you went back to working as a showgirl,
As
right?
a showgirl, I stayed on another year as a showgirl, and then I left for about 3 years just to kind of figure out what else I was going to do with the rest of my life, and ventured in a few things. Worked as a flight attendant for TWA for about a year. Back here in Kansas City, I worked on the riverboat singing for about a year. Moved to LA, tried to dabble in stuff out there, and that didn't work out. So I went back to the circus. That was home for me, and that was an easier life for me, and I loved it there. So
But
yeah, went back as
it wasn't just the Ringling Circus. You found yourself over on the Big Apple Circus. You worked with Alvin Ailey, right? The dance
yeah.
department.
I How I got over to Big Apple Circus. I went back to Ringling in '88 as a showgirl. Stayed as a showgirl for another 3 years, and then decided to stop dancing. Body was starting to break down. It happens. But I stayed on the show working behind the scenes with wardrobe. And halfway into that season, Tim Host came and asked me if I was interested in working with horses. So they sent me down to Florida to train to work the Big and Little Horse Act. And I did that for about a year or so. And then my my dad's health was starting to fail. So I came home to Kansas City to spend some time with my folks. Took a year off, went back on the road. And the year that I went back in '94 was the year of the train wreck.
Mm.
And I was just working in wardrobe and with Mike Melson in the office. And after the train wreck, they needed to put people in hotels, and transportation needed to be arranged. So they gave me that job. So for 2 years, I was like a administrative assistant tour and had to do travel and housing for those who were displaced from the train wreck. When when they got the train all back on track, and a lot of things had changed during those 2 years. And I got a call from Big Apple Circus. They were looking for a new company manager, and I told them I was interested. And so I went to, at the end of the season, I went up to New York and interviewed with Paul Binder and Guillaume, and I got that job. So that's how I ended up on Big Apple Circus as their company manager in '96.
And you, I mean, when you look back at this career in the circus, you know, a lot of people really, they kind of get focused, or, you know, you might even say buttonholed into a certain situation where that's kind of the only thing that they do. They're a performer, they're a manager, but you really have spread your career across so many different parts of the circus. What do you like the most?
I liked it all. I loved it all. I love performing. Big Apple Circus, I love being company manager over there and living in a trailer and traveling across country doing that part. But I've loved it all. I've loved the family that I developed with them, and I still, even in when I left Big Apple Circus, I went to work for Alvin Ailey as their company manager for 4 years, and they were right around the corner from Lincoln Center, so it was perfect. I was still at home, and I still was on the lot with Big Apple Circus, all the time. So I'm still near my family when I wasn't on the road. And then when I left Alvin Ailey after 4 years, I moved to Las Vegas to work for Cirque du Soleil and got a job with Cirque du Soleil, just working behind the scenes in wardrobe. I loved that. That was my retirement gig, and I got to stay in the business and with the people that I love and do what I love. It's like at that point I was like looking after the underlings, that were coming up. And a lot of us behind the scenes in Vegas were, used to perform ourselves. But it was nice to be able to pass on our knowledge and experiences and help them in their, help the underlings, and I like that. And the only reason I got out of it was because of COVID, shut everything down. During that time, I came back to Kansas City to spend time with my family. So that's what I'm back in Kansas City for now. So
That's
I've
great.
had a very full love career in it, and I've loved every minute of it and all different aspects of it. I can't tell you one thing that I've loved more than anything. I loved it all.
But I mean, as I said earlier, what a career,
Mhm.
starting off as a circus fan, basically, traveling to Chicago to see the show, and then being brought into clown college, becoming the first black female clown on the Ringling Circus, then becoming a showgirl, then becoming, someone who presented tigers and horses and company manager for Big Apple Circus. I mean, you have truly had a very, very broad experience in the circus world. One of the things we like to do here, because we do have about 90 people who are signed in. I know people do have some questions for you. If you do have a question for Bernice, feel free to put it into the chat here, and we'll try to get to it. But you talked about some of the people you work with. I know you're very close with Mike Melson, who's on the call here right now.
Yeah.
He's someone who is very active in our organization, the Circus Historical Society. Of course, he was the general manager on the Ringling Circus for a
Yeah.
long time also. But those relationships that you build, I mean, they really truly are relationships to last a lifetime, aren't
Their
they?
lifetime. I have friends from my circus family that we talk on Zoom every week.
That's great.
Now, people that I've been, from my early years, we're still best friends. We're still close to this day, and we keep in touch weekly Zooms. And we it's just you become your family.
For sure.
And yeah, one of the reasons that I was able to have all those experiences with Ringling, especially, one thing I loved about Irvin Feld that he was always looking for something different and presenting something different to the audience. And if you gave him an idea, he would go with it. And I mentioned things to them that I was interested in doing, and they'd never had anybody go from from clown to showgirl before. So that was a first as well. And then others did that after me as well. And we had showgirls who became clowns or clowns who became showgirls. It was just, I crossed over a lot of lines only because I told them I wanted to do it. And they were like, Sure. We like
You
what
know,
you
that's
do.
one of the
Yeah.
things, even at Feld Entertainment today, a lot of times they take people who are maybe are in a different discipline and they move them into a role that they're not accustomed to just because they have proved that they have
Mhm.
innovation and other things. Speaking
That's
of
the
innovation,
true
what
definition of diversity. That's a true definition of diversity right there. Yeah.
you are correct. Speaking of people who have great ideas, Toto Johnson, longtime clown on the Ringling Circus
Yeah.
and one of our good friends here, has a question for you.
Yeah.
It's in the chat, and if you have a question for Bernice, feel free to put one in there. But he says, when you switched from clown to showgirl, was there ever a time when you wanted to jump back into a gag now and then, or was it a clean break?
No, it was a clean break because I wanted to spread my wings as a showgirl. I always loved the costumes and wanted to be that feminine girl. However, when the year that I was down training in Florida for the horse act, Clown College was going on, and they were practicing clown car, and Barbara Nolan was down there as well. So she and I went down, went and jumped in the clown car just for laughs, just for fun,
Oh, that's funny.
for old time's sakes. Let me ride in the clown car one more time. That was fun. Yeah.
You know, and in the days that you were with the circus, also, the showgirls worked pretty darn hard. You know, I mean, you were riding elephants, you were doing web too, right?
I never did web actually because it was on the Red Show, but not on the Blue Show.
Okay, but you
Mhm.
definitely were riding elephants
I
in
did ride
that
elephants
time.
with just that one year, one tour. Um, was it what year was that? Oh, the Clown College anniversary year. We got to ride elephants that year. Yeah,
Great. And
yeah.
then, you know, when you kind of think about some of those other events, and you talked about it earlier, the tragedy that happened in Lakeland, Florida, when the Blue Unit train derailed and a couple of people unfortunately lost their lives that day.
Hmm.
That must have been a real tragedy for those of you, anyone who was involved with the show at that time.
It was a tragedy for the entire show, for the entire organization. It was a
It
tragedy.
truly was. I mean, just something totally out of the blue like that to happen.
Mhm.
And then, you know, they had to turn to trusted employees like you to kind of take it to the next level. So,
Yeah, and it
um,
was funny because I never knew why I was chosen for that. Mike Melson told me years later it's because he recommended me to do that. So I was going, "Oh, you're the culprit." I said, "How the hell did I ended up in this hot seat?"
yeah.
But I took it and I ran with it because you somebody had to take care of everybody. So they said Bernice can do it. I'm going, "I guess I can. I guess I will." So
But you know, those types of sort of responsibilities also, I'm sure, helped you out a lot when you were with the Big Apple Circus as company
that's
manager
what
too.
that's what catapulted me into in that direction was because I had been doing it for 2 years. When I got the call from Big Apple Circus to saying they were looking for a company manager, I asked them what the duties were, and they said, "I'm the perfect girl for that. So I'm your girl." So, and after talking to Paul and Guillaume, I drove out to see them. They talked to me. We had a really nice long visit, and they agreed. And the good thing is with the company management position wasn't just housing and transportation, but it was also a lot of PR, which I had so many great mentors in that field as a performer that I was able to carry that over to Big Apple Circus and do a lot of things that I think the company managers before me didn't have. And the publicists were always there was always a little bit of a tug of war with the publicists because people want things or have a vision of certain things they want for especially for TV or things like that, and I would have to reel them in every now. Realistically, you can't do that. We can't do that. We can't give you that. But I can give you something else. I can give you and that instead. And it usually worked out. And the publicists were like, "What do you mean you can't tell them no?" It's like, yeah, you can. If you can't deliver what they want, you have to tell them no and give them something else. So that was, I think that's why Paul loved having me there for so much because I had that kind of insight, and that came from Ringling, being a performer, working with the publicists and the promoters with very closely. A lot of them were my best friends, and Barbara Fluke out to this day. She one of my biggest, you know, I learned a lot from working with her as our national publicist, and she and I are still best friends, really great friends today.
And of course,
But a lot
Barbara,
of the promoters, I learned from my experiences as a performer working with the promoters what you can and cannot do, or and the things it takes to do, to put together certain things and everything. So I was very happy to carry that over to Big Apple Circus, and I learned a lot, I did a lot, and I grew a lot there. So
and of course,
yeah.
Barbara was one of the most creative publicists, promoters
Yes.
on the Ringling Circus. Some of the big events that you saw back in that era between about
She was there
1970
when
and
I
19.
she was there when I was doing the horse act, and so I did a lot with her with the horse act, but she also let me tag along to some certain things that I was not involved in at all. Like I said, let me be your assistant. I just want to tag along. So and she let
We're
me
gonna
do
have to
that.
get her on one of these Circus History Lives because she's got great stories too. So you are watching Circus History Live. This is our monthly opportunity to get together and talk about some of the things that have made circus history or are making circus history today. Our guest is Bernice Collins, who of course was the first African American female clown with the Ringling Circus, but has done so much more, as you have heard. Historical Society is an organization made up of those who follow circus history. And if you're not a member, I urge you to come and take a look at circushistory.org, which is our website. You get our Bandwagon magazine, which is our quarterly publication, journal of circus history. Bernice Collins, we've got a couple of other questions here. The circus lives in a lot of places. The big Ringling three-ring circus that traveled on a mile-long railroad train does not exist anymore. But circuses do exist, and one of those is the Bindlestaff Family Circus, a small circus that travels around the United States right now. And we have a question from Stephanie, who is actually with the Bindlestaff Family Circus, and her question is, as a performer, and maybe even as a manager too, what kind of advice would you give to new emerging artists who are coming into the circus world today? Now, you're not in the circus world today, but what would you tell them? Because many of these younger kids, they really never had the opportunity to experience the circus that you were a part of. What would you tell them if they wanted to be a circus performer today?
No, they'd have to be more specific about that. I can't just give advice on
Well, a lot of them
random
are coming out of
advice about
circus
how to live your
schools.
life. That's their life. They have to figure it out for themselves. Everybody's experience is different. And everybody's coming from different places, and everybody's coming with different talents and dreams and expectations for what they want their lives to be. You have to take what you want out of your life and what you want to contribute to any show that you go on to and perform. It's going to be your experience. I can't give that kind of advice because nobody could give me that advice. It's like each one is a unique experience, and everybody's got their own stories to tell. And if you get a bunch of us together, oh my God, it could go on forever,
So,
exchanging stories and experiences that we've all had, and everybody's got a different story.
the we always hear about the impact that animal activists had on the circus, and we do have a question about that. When you were with the show, when you were working with Charlie Bauman, and even with the horses, the animal activism was not quite as active as it became later on. Um, your experience, your personal experience, watching the animals, the grooms, the people who took care of it. I mean, it was actually a very positive. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but they took really good care of those animals, didn't
Oh
they?
my God, Charlie Bauman loved his cats more than he loved people. That's why I said you had to earn it from Charlie, because he cared more about those animals than he cared about the people on the show. And those were his children. Those were his babies. And same with Gunther, same with Axel. Those were their livelihood and their passion. I mean, those animals were very well taken care of and
Yes, they
loved.
were. Yes.
And, and you can't work with but you can't work with wild animals without giving them that, because they won't do anything for you, or they won't listen to you if they don't have that love and respect from you to begin with. Anything you saw out on the stage was, a lot of time spent with those animals.
I
And
want to
Charlie
talk.
Brown, I would sit up in the seats and watch Charlie break in new babies. He was so, it was like teaching a child to walk. And he was very patient with them. Less patient than he was any human being. Very
He
patient with his
was
kids.
an excellent tiger trainer, animal trainer.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I
Peggy
watched him and
Williams.
Gunther train animals in the ring, and they were just it was like teaching children to walk and to do anything. That's how they were with their animals. Mhm.
Peggy Williams once told me a story about how she was watching a rehearsal in Venice. Charlie Bauman was rehearsing, and Gunther Gable Williams was sitting there watching also. And they were pretty quiet. And then Gunther turned to Peggy and said, "He's the best with tigers." Gunther
Mhm.
Gable Williams was no slouch,
No,
but
he wasn't.
he said that Charlie Bauman was the best. He didn't
And
say
and and,
elephants, but
and
he said
after
tigers.
yeah, the year after I lost the Tiger Act and Charlie retired, and then I went over to the Red Show for a season. I was there with Gunther and them, and we got to DC. I really didn't talk to Gunther a whole lot, but we were in DC, sitting backstage at the DC Armory just during the show, and he came over and sat on the wardrobe box next to me, and he looked at me and he said, "I don't know whatever you've heard. I just want you to know that I was very proud of you," and that made my heart.
Wow.
I was like, coming from him to
To
me
get an
out of the
endorsement from
blue.
Gunther Gable Williams.
From Gunther, a man whom I had admired since I was a child. One of the reasons I joined the circus was because of him, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And it was just like that did it for me right there. I'm like, "Wow, wow."
I want to talk about a project that I know is near and dear to your heart. There was an animal trainer, a fellow by the name of Junior Ruffin. A lot
Mhm,
of people may not know him the way they know Charlie Bauman or Gunther Gable Williams, but he was an animal trainer on the Hoxie Brothers Circus and others. He was a cage boy for Clyde Beatty back in the day. And
mhm.
over the past number of years, you have become very involved with what's called the Uncle Junior Project. Tell me a little bit about that.
I wasn't so much involved in it as I contributed to it a lot. Veronica Blair is the one who is that's her baby, and she reached out to me to be interviewed for that. She's doing documentaries about African American performers in the circus going back forever. And she reached out to me. I was living in Vegas, and she wanted to come to Vegas to sit down and get my story, just like we are now. And but there are others in Las Vegas as well. Um, King Charles Troop, Huel Spate, Skeeter Reese, and there are a few of Danny's Payne. She's in Las Vegas too. So when she was coming to Vegas, she wanted to come to Vegas to interview me, but she wanted to interview everybody else as well while she was there. So I just opened up my home to her to have all those interviews in my home. But we used different locations, inside and outside at the house, so you didn't know it was the same place But and then when she put the exhibit together, the first exhibit together up in San Francisco, I sent her my costumes. I still have my clown costume, my horse act costume, and the tiger act costume. I still have those. And so I loaned her those for the exhibit that she was doing. Vanessa Thomas let her use the ringmaster costume that she had from Big Apple Circus. Floyd Harrison sent one of the King Charles Troop costumes, and I was able to take off from work in Vegas and fly up for the weekend to see that exhibit, and it was amazing. But she's doing some amazing things up
You
there, and
know,
I'm really glad that she's doing that. It's special. It's
it is
special.
because, I think that while there African Americans have been a part of the American circus for a long time, it's really since about 1969 when the King Charles Troupe became, such an important part of both the Red and Blue Unit over time.
Mhm.
The introduction of other acts, Satin, which was a great African
Yes.
American aerialist act,
Mhm.
yourself, some of the African American clowns. It's great that the Uncle Junior Project really focuses on the contributions of these extraordinary performers, really. And
Yeah.
if you are interested in learning more about the Uncle Junior Project, I urge you to check out their website. It is unclejuniorproject.com. It's a great historic document on some of these really unique people, and of course, Junior Ruffin himself was one of those. Even though he was never really on one of the big shows, he definitely contributed in so many ways.
Junior was on Ringling Brothers when I joined this show, but he was working as a porter on the train, and that's where I met Junior. And I know that Veronica and a number of other people met him in Universal because he helped Ricky Walker put together, and in his beginning stages of Universal Circus,
Yes.
he was very instrumental in that, and that's why he got the name of Uncle Junior. We just called him Junior on Ringing, but over at Universal, everybody called him Uncle Junior. So that's where the name Uncle Junior comes from. He's everybody's uncle by that time. So he was a good
Fantastic.
man.
So
He was a good man.
when you look back on this very rich, long career that you've had in the circus, what are some of the real highlights in your mind? You know, if you were laying in bed at night and you were thinking back, what would you think about?
Being in the cage with the tigers, riding on top of the elephants, backstage with all the performers, just having a good time. The barbecues out in the train yards with people from all over the world experiencing different foods from everybody would share their, foods from different countries that they were from. And eh, just the experiences, the travel, standing on the vestibule as the train went through the countryside, waving at people in their backyards as the train went through their backyards in different cities. The train rides were incredible. I even took my mom on the train ride once for her birthday out of Kansas City down to Tulsa because she's from Oklahoma. And for her birthday, Mike Melson allowed us to let her ride with us on the train from Kansas City down to Oklahoma. And she still remembers that time. I made breakfast for her on the train in the morning, and we sat on the vestibule and had our coffee. She got to experience the whole thing. Living on the train was the best experience of my life. It was great.
Great. Well, Bernice Collins, thank you again for joining us for this episode of Circus History Live. You are truly someone who has experienced so many aspects of the circus world: performer, manager, costumes. Just what a privilege for us to hear from you today. Again,
It's been an incredible journey. This life has been great for me. So, yeah, circus is great for me.
well, thank you again for joining us, Bruce.
Thank you so much, Bernice. That was wonderful. Terrific,
Thank
terrific program. And I think everyone just appreciates you sharing your experience. As Chris mentioned, the Circus Historical Society is made up of folks who love the circus. They love all aspects of the circus like you do. You know, the culture, the history, what's happening today. And it was just so nice to have you on our program tonight. It was
It was
terrific.
my
Thank you so
pleasure.
much. Also like to thank Chris Berry for being our host. He does a terrific job every time. And behind
Yeah.
the scenes, Anya Norris, who does our social media and the recording. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending. As Chris said, if you're not already a member of the Circus Historical Society, please join us. Come visit circushistory.org. It's only $60 a year. You get a wonderful journal that comes out quarterly, and it's a scholarly journal with all kinds of good research and great articles about just about every aspect of the circus, from the people, the logistics, the culture. Chris is just finishing up a series on Madison Square Garden, about the history of that relationship of the building to the circus over the years. So again, thank you so much. Chris, final words?
We will see you down the road. Thank you again, Bernice, and we'll do it again next month.
Love you all.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. See you down
Good
the
night.
road. Bye-bye.
Night.